Once again, given that we were working on a lower budget, and because I have years and years of practical creature effects under my belt, it just made sense to do this movie, with practical effects.
There's a big demand now for people to kind of go back and see things that are real. And, it's become a bit of a lost art over the last few years. It's so easy to see, create, or imagine anything using CGI. But there's a certain sense of missing something when there's something not real on the set.
You look at movies like John Carpenter's The Thing or Ridley Scott's Alien, which are two of the greatest sci-fi horror films ever made, and the effects still hold up.
When Paul and I first talked, I told him, I've never shot creature effects, I've never really shot puppets, that sort of a thing, so you'll kind of have to hold my hand with this.
I knew exactly how I was going to film these practical effects before we built a single thing. And I brought in Jerry Constantine and Constantine Effects, and then we also brought in David Miller. And these are just top-notch people. They're people who really care what they're doing, and they're also friends and people I've always wanted to work with.
I've been friends with our director Paul Salamoff for I guess maybe maybe 17 years or so, maybe a little bit longer. And we've always talked about doing different kinds of movies and stuff along those lines because he worked in effects. As a matter of fact, Paul got me my first long-term job.
Because he has the background of a special effects person and, puppeteer and all that stuff, it makes it easier on us because he understands what we're going through and how, if he asks for one little thing, he knows what's involved in doing it. So I think that has a lot to do with his decision making because he's been there.
Yeah, there's some great stuff I've learned actually just listening to Paul. And I've done, we do a little at school. We do a little bit of stuff with puppets and stuff. So it's great to hear him, in there with the puppeteers and coaxing a performance out of a piece of latex. It's beautiful to watch.
He's incredibly meticulous with every single detail, which is so exciting, and he's so open and inclusive of what he's up to.
Whatever the procedure is, he knows exactly what you're talking about, and it helps making decisions. Or he even gives a suggestion.
You'll probably notice in some of the behind-the-scenes footage that I do jump in there and puppeteer sometimes. Is nothing to do with the fact that they couldn't, handle it themselves. I think you just can't take the effects out of me completely. Even though I've sort of been retired from it for over a decade at this point, I still enjoy it. I'm a little kid, you know what I mean? And it's like, how could I have rubber monsters on my set and not get in there and breathe life into it?
Stage one is basically a meteor that comes to Earth and gets in the ground, and these people discover it. And then stage two is more of I guess it's growing quite a bit. It's the size of a large animal, large dog or something. It starts growing again to stage three. It falls on the floor because it's so big it can't fit on the table anymore. And that's like 6 feet long and 4 feet wide and 5 feet high. And then the final stage is a cocoon stage that comes out of this stage three and attaches itself to the wall. And there's like a heart-shaped kind of embryo inside it. And that's the final stage.
A lot of the designs were coming from different kinds of reptiles and amphibians. And then we also looked at butterflies and larvae and cocoons.
There are some reptile-like things on it. There's some undersea creature things on it. A lot of strange colors that haven't been seen before on aliens, because aliens are usually like dark or translucent or whatever. But these have some really cool colors and purples and oranges, which you wouldn't think it would look good on an alien, but it actually does. I think that's Paul wanting to do something different because he's tired of seeing the same thing over and over.
The first one was a sculpture in a mold, and which basically means we get sculpted out of clay, and then we make our adjustments based off of what Paul wants, and then we make a mold which is like a negative.
It's mostly, we used fiberglass material for the first couple of stages, and on stage two there was some silicone material to kind of bring it to life because it flexes and moves better.
And then the third stage was actually what we call foam fabricating, where it's going to be so huge, it's going to be so heavy that we actually figured it would be better, and Paul has a background in fabricating as well, to really, you know, take like upholstery foam and you kind of butt the pieces up and you make all different shapes and patterns. And we have this like aluminum banding, framework that's inside of it.
And then all the little scales were added separately. They were actually cut out of foam and burned with a soldering gun and put texture in it and all that, and then glue them on individually onto the big shell.
The procedure for stage 4 was to take elements of stage 3, kind of recreate them to a certain point, add some of these hard plastic pieces and some goo, and we got our little web thing. We are making webs, and really just kind of just like throwing anything that looks like weird and gooey. Get it on there, you know?
And it has the embryo stuck in the wall with the open shell of stage 3. It's all attached to the wall with tethers and weird webbing and things like that. And to get that to stay in there and pulsate, and they have a light in it, and smoke and cobwebs and all kinds of things in there. It's the most difficult so far, because we have to make it so it rolls down out of the cocoon onto the floor, and then we have the girl emerging from it. So there's quite a few different little inserts and things we have to do to sell it.
And we had a creature show and tell the first night they got here, where they laid everything out in the room. And you're just standing there slack-jawed at what these guys have made out of like foam and rubber and paint. It's crazy.
I think one of the great things on this movie is seeing how the crew, is like, how are we going to film this? Like, it really, like, I don't understand how you guys are going to film it. Even the cast was like this, and even Tom Atkins was like, he thought we were just going to film the CG, and there was going to be green screen and like just little orbs on set that like for eye lines.
I was really surprised when Paul told me. I said, so this alien that grows from something like that they find in a field to 2/3 the size of a garage, and that's all going to be CGI, right? And he said, nope, it'd be practical.
To actually see this thing in real life, for the actors to be able to see it and touch it and interact with it, it brings a whole level of authenticity and honesty to the performances that really make a difference.
We're actually seeing the alien grow in size. We're actually seeing the different stages, as opposed to, okay, now it's bigger. Okay, now it's the size of the room, and just kind of trying to create that in your mind and hoping that it works in the edit on, off of a green screen. We're actually able to see what the audience is seeing, so that's special.
Working with practical effects carries its own challenges and its own benefits. I think the great thing about working with practical effects is you don't really have to imagine anything. It's right there. And you actually feel something when a tentacle's coming at you. You really feel, as a human being, you're like, oh, something's invading my personal space. That's awesome. So none of those reactions are forced or manufactured.
my facial expressions, that's just me. I'll just be looking like, whoa.
Holy mother of God. What the hell?
And you want something to look at. It's hard to just imagine something. You might imagine it and it might be totally different, but when you really and truly see it, then you be like, oh man, that's not even what I thought it was gonna be.
I'm always, very aware of the fact that there is something attached to me. It never kind of feels like I'm able to just walk out of the room without it, which is really appropriate, because when it's not attached, I can't. The character can't walk. So it's kind of a joy and a huge amount of pain all at the same time. And we've been ripping it off, and it's hard. It's a lot harder than I thought it would be. But I'm enjoying it because it gives me something to focus on. Yeah.
It has a sense of life to it that you can't get with CGI in front of a green screen. What is that? Then you're really making believe, but you're kind of imagining what you're seeing, but we're seeing what we're seeing, and it's much better, I think.
you get a realism that I think we've lost in the digital age. And yes, so the plus side is practical effects, practical effects.
And they've done a great job. I mean, the actual alien through the different stages looks terrific, and having the real props on set. That was a great call by Paul or whoever decided on that.
If we didn't have this as practical effects, I don't know that we would have been able to do it as easily as it has been.
And working with Jerry and his team, his special effects team, that's also a great honor, because those guys are veterans from way back, and they have a long storied career in a lot of pedigreed movies. And the beauty of their work, it's really art. It's amazing what they've come up with.
And I think, you know, I'd love to see more of it. I'd love to see more of this making a comeback.